Creating content isn't a real job. That's what I heard once while sitting in a cafe with friends. The conversation was about content creators, the influencers, as most people usually call them. But is that even a job? They kept going. Come on, I could just go out there showing off clothes or how I spend my vacation. For me, someone who probably lives more on the internet than in real life, it seemed like a completely normal job. In fact, I knew it wasn't easy to create content if you wanted to take it seriously and expose yourself 10 times a day to people who live to peek into others' lives through the keyhole. That didn't scare me though. What scared me was that I'd have to do everything perfectly before deciding to even put myself out there. So instead of letting a few more years pass while drowning in overthinking, the switch flipped and I started. Not timidly, with full force. And I completed a month with over 100 pieces of content uploaded across 5 or 6 platforms. The day I started writing online every day. I remember it was October 26, my name day, when I began writing every day on social media. I thought that if I managed to post something every day, I would always remember the day I started. I also remember Casey Neistat's vlog, which was the reason I started taking YouTube more seriously back in 2015. He started his vlog on his birthday. Ever since then, inspired by him, I would thought, what a great idea to start something on a meaningful day. So I always had it in mind to start something on my name day or birthday or any day that felt special, not just some random day. Of course, I didn't think I was starting something when I hit the button to post my first message that day, simply because it wasn't my first social media post ever. Inspiration usually comes at an unexpected moment. That day, I just felt like writing something and sharing it into the abyss of social networks, the way I'd occasionally done before. It just happened that I loved the speed at which I shared a few thoughts, and by the end of the day, the idea crossed my mind. Let's try this again tomorrow. And I got hooked. It wasn't like I forced myself out of my comfort zone. It happened completely spontaneously on a Sunday that just wasn't an ordinary Sunday. Social media won me over instead of writing on my blog. I had always wanted to write more often, whenever that might be. So social media became the place where I could share something quickly, write something and have it travel the world immediately. Of course, social media is rented land, as they say. You never know when they might pull the plug and all your efforts goes to waste. With that in mind, my goal was to write on my own personal website. But there, I didn't want to post just a simple text, a paragraph, a random thought that popped into my head. I wanted to add images, choose catchy headings, make it SEO friendly, add links and format the text with bold and italics. All of that stopped me from sharing a thought when it came. I wanted to be perfect, or at least not something as rough as a post on X or Threads. On those platforms, I could write even a single sentence and set it out into the internet. On my blog, that felt impossible. Or at least I didn't like it, though of course I could have written a one-sentence post. But I wouldn't be happy ending up with a blog full of mini posts. The beginning is half the battle. From the very first day, I shared 5 thoughts, 5 ideas on X and Threads, and it felt fantastic. Every time I finished one, I told myself, see, it wasn't that hard. Let's do the next. I felt incredible freedom turning all the ideas I had saved as drafts over the previous years into published content. With over 400 thoughts waiting to be posted, I knew I wasn't short on ideas to create content. My problem was that I overthought how to share them, why to do it, and what the ideal, most efficient way would be to maximize every detail. That kept me from being consistent about writing online and sharing ideas sporadically, ideas I truly couldn't keep inside. By the end of that first day, I remember sitting there proudly looking at my 5 posts. And then I did something completely new to me. I started scheduling the next day's posts. That alone felt like it could be enough to keep me going. It would be a shame not to stick with it now that I had found something that worked. My ideas weren't reaching far enough. Once I got into the groove of posting my ideas daily on X and Threads, I had time to add more social platforms to my workflow. Where it used to take me an hour to prepare and schedule 6 posts a day, now it took me half the time. So I wanted to use the extra time to amplify my voice even more. The question now was, which platform offered the most leverage? Clearly, YouTube. But YouTube is much more focused on video than text. Still, since it's one of the 2 core hubs for everything I create online, along with my blog, I wanted to make the most of it. So I first started cross-posting anything with an image from the other platforms to YouTube. Now my YouTube channel would have daily content in post format, shorts, and long-form content like podcasts, vlogs, and mini documentaries on my English channel. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that everything I create on my English channels, I upload exactly the same content in Greek. But that's a topic for another episode. Next, I added Facebook, where quite a few people follow me, Instagram, and finally TikTok to my cross-posting workflow. Those are mostly channels where I repurpose content, pieces from what I've already posted elsewhere. My original thoughts, where I always start writing ideas from scratch, are X and Threads, since they are the most text-focused platforms. The worst social media platform. When I decided to share my YouTube shorts as Reels on Instagram and TikTok, I knew it would add a lot of extra work. Besides creating everything in 2 languages, which means double the filming and editing time, every new distribution platform meant double the effort. Greek and English Instagram, Greek and English TikTok. The only thing that exists only in English is LinkedIn, but cross-posting there happens automatically through the app I use to manage my social profiles. Type fully. What I learned after a month of posting on all these platforms is that usually whatever performs well on the Greek profiles performs correspondingly well on the English ones. That means the idea itself matters more than how you phrase it or that the international audience is very different from the Greek one. Also for me, TikTok was and still is the worst social network. For 3 reasons. First, if there are malicious commenters once on other networks, there are 10 on TikTok. TikTok is the absolute bottom of the barrel. We had already established that on a Greek podcast I do with a friend of mine. Second, TikTok is the strictest platform when it comes to content authenticity. If you upload the same content in 2 languages on 2 different profiles, even if it's visually identical but with captions in another language, the second one gets buried. New people will never see it. You have to crop it by 10%, add text at the beginning, or slightly modify the video so TikTok doesn't flag it as duplicate content and it never sees the light of day. And third, to upload content, I have to do it from the mobile app. If I use the desktop version, TikTok Studio, I constantly have to log in and out of different profiles depending on the language. There's no central management platform like Meta Business Suite where I manage all my Instagram and Facebook profiles. This has made me question whether I should keep spending time creating for TikTok. When content creation becomes addictive for the wrong reasons. Even though I'm a numbers guy, I fell into the classic trap everyone falls into when they create something online. Checking stats every 5 minutes. Before, I just had a website. I would check once a week, at worst and once a day, and knowing whether things were going well or not, I'd focus on what actually moves the needle. That means coming up with more ideas, testing them, solving small problems, and sharing them. In other words, doing the real work. Because checking stats is not work. That doesn't mean I should ignore them completely, of course. But checking once a week to see how my content is performing is enough to get a sense of what's working and what isn't. Now, instead of one website and one analytics account, I suddenly had 5 to 6 daily posts across 5 to 6 different platforms. And all of that times 2, because I was doing it in English as well as in Greek. And it's so addictive to watch numbers climb, graphs shoot up, that gradually, instead of creating most of the time, some days I ended up overanalyzing stats across all my social profiles. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is interpreting those numbers as a measure of my success. That meant if something I said got almost no response, it would bring me down so much that I might not post anything else that day. Luckily, I realized it quickly and now try not to pay attention to the numbers unless something really blows up. Overthinking helped me find a rhythm in content creation. For years, I was preparing the ground to create content daily. From 2016, when I made my first vlogging attempts, to 2019, when documentary style won me over, I kept finding new ways to organize my thoughts. But I never found the thing that would click and get me started. For the last 3 years, while walking every day, I constantly thought during my walks about how to organize my thoughts, to find a system that wouldn't require me to think anymore. I didn't want every time I pulled out my phone or camera to capture a moment to wonder, should I shoot horizontally or vertical? Where should I post this? How will I use it? Is this a waste of time? All those second thoughts and doubts often made me put the camera away without hitting record. While searching for a solution to the problem that was holding me back, deep down I knew that one day everything would fall into place, and the only thing I'd regret would be not finding it sooner. It was like I would put together a 999-piece puzzle and was missing just one, the biggest one. And for the past month, it's been like the pieces are clicking together one by one. Everything I'd been thinking about suddenly fits. Each solution completes another. As I tested ideas, I found solutions to small problems. Now that I've started and am facing those problems, it's amazing how quickly I overcome them because I had already figured out the solutions earlier. So I like to believe that time wasn't wasted, because I wouldn't have the rhythm I have now. Plus, starting revealed new problems I hadn't even considered. Thanks to my overthinking, I had already solved at least half of them before I began. At this point, I need to tell you that you are listening or watching on YouTube a voice letter from Greece, the audiobook version of my newsletter that I send to my blog's subscribers. Since reading is faster than listening to my awful accent, consider subscribing to receive the transcript of this letter in your inbox a few hours before it goes live on YouTube and podcast platforms. The biggest lesson after a month of daily content creation. Little by little, content creation has become part of my daily routine. I have figured out which hours to schedule my social media posts, which days to upload YouTube videos, and how all these ideas connect to build something creative around me, to create the personal brand of me. In the end, what I lacked wasn't willpower or persistence. What I lacked was a system or a workflow that would let me be creative without feeling overwhelmed by the workload and without sacrificing huge chunks of my life to content creation. In the past, to make one video, I would stay up all night in front of the computer or steal hours from my family just to create content because time is running out and I can't miss the deadline. Nothing like that now. First, I have a schedule, a routine. I know where, what, and when I'll write something. I know which idea will become a post, which a podcast, which a reel, and which a long-form video. But most importantly, I'm flexible. I adapt the schedule to my daily life. And now that I have a system, I don't feel guilty if I miss a deadline, because tomorrow is another day. If I didn't start now, when? The algorithm often showed me stories of people urging me to just start. Start and you learn by doing, was the general advice. But I didn't want to learn along the way. I didn't want my public image to look messy. I didn't want to betray my perfectionism. Once I started, I realized I was far from creating something perfect, something I'd be 100% proud of. And I understood I would never reach it if I didn't begin. Now I feel like I'm at 50% of my personal perfect. 8 out of 10 things I publish, I know that in a month I look back and cringe, as my daughter would say. At least I'll have 10 things I have created instead of 0. Instead of letting another month pass with nothing to show for it. And every now and then, some piece of content, a post, a short, a video, will make me feel a little good about myself.